Hi everyone, today we are going to go over the study guide for the 10.4 to 10.7 quiz. Remote learners, please remember if you are taking your quiz at home, you are expected to take your quiz during your scheduled geometry period. All right, number 1, write the equation of a circle with center -4, 5, and has a radius of 6. Let's review our standard form of an equation for a circle, which is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared is equal to r squared, where h and k are your center. So this would be h, this is k, and r is our radius, which we know in this case is 6. So now I just need to plug h, k, and r into my equation. So I have x minus, well, h is a -4, so I have -4, square that, plus y minus, well, k is +5, squared is equal to r squared. We know r is 6, and we need to square that. Minus a negative here, that turns into a positive, so I end up having x plus 4 squared, plus, this stays the same, the y minus 5 squared is equal to 6 squared, which is 36. And that is the standard form of that circle. Next, write the equation of the circle with center 0, 0, and another point on the circle is 4, 7. So I know that the center is 0, 0, but I do not know what my radius is of the circle. And so I'm going to need to use the distance formula to find the distance between my coordinate 0, 0 and my coordinate 7, 4. We know the distance formula is the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. Now I want to plug in my numbers for x2, y2 and x1, y1 into my distance formula. So let's simplify inside the parentheses now. So I end up getting that I have the square root of 7 squared plus 4 squared. If we plug this into the calculator, this ends up being the square root of 65. And if you plug in the square root of 65 in your calculator, you get approximately 8.6. So now let's sketch out our circle, even though it didn't ask us that. Let's practice. So we always start with our center, 0, 0. I know my radius is 8.0, but we're just going to say, get as close to 8 as we can. So I'm going to go 8 on that side, 8 on the other side, 8 up, and 8 down. So this is what our circle looks like. And now we need to write our equation. So we know that the center was 0, 0, so that was our h and k. And remember, we don't need to write minus 0, so I'm just going to say x squared plus y squared is equal to, well, we know that r is the square root of 65. So if I plug in the calculator the square root of 65 and I square it, what ends up happening is that our square root and square cancel out and we're left with 65. So this is my equation of our circle. For these few problems, I would get out your cheat sheet for the 10.4, 10.7 formulas that I provided you on Polaris. All right, so if we find the measure of angle 1, this is angle 1, we notice that we have an arc measure here, and it's 140. So we know that that angle 1 is going to be half of 140. So the measure of angle 1 is equal to 70. All right, number 4, we want to figure out what is the measure of angle 1. Well, before we can find the measure of angle 1, I actually need to figure out this measure here. Well, if you look at this arc length, we notice that that arc is 118. So to figure out this little guy here, I'm just going to take 118 and divide it by 2. And when you do so, you get 59. Well, if you look closely, we have a linear pair here, which means the measure of angle 1 plus the angle 59 is equal to 180. So if we subtract 59 from each side, we end up getting that the measure of angle 1 then is equal to 121. Question number 5, we want to find the value of x, find the value of y, and find the measure of arc EHG. So let's start with x. We have a quadrilateral inside a circle. So that means that the opposite angles are supplementary. So to find x, we're going to have x plus 105 is equal to 180. Subtract 105 from each side, and we end up getting that x is equal to 85. Let's solve for y. So I know that those two angles are supplementary. So 95 plus y is equal to 180. Subtract 95 from each side. Y then is equal to 75. Next, we want to find the measure of arc EHG. EHG. If we look at our circle, we notice that this arc right here, or I'm sorry, not arc, this angle is inscribed in that arc. So I'm just going to take this angle measure here and double it, and that will give me the measure of arc EHG. And so we end up getting that that angle, or that arc measure, is 190. Next, we want to find the measure of arc BC. So arc BC is right here. And I know that this arc here corresponds with this angle measure. I'll use a different color here. All right, so I'm just focusing on this arc. And so what I'm going to do is take that angle measure, I'm going to double it. So that means that this arc is 128. If you look closely, we notice that AB is a diameter, meaning that this arc, I'll highlight it here, this arc and this arc BC add up to 180. So if I take 128 plus x, that's what I'm looking for, is equal to 180. We end up getting that x, or the arc we're looking for, arc BC, is equal to 52. So the measure of arc BC is equal to 52. Number 7, we want to find the value of x. So we have two secants here, and we see that the collision of those two secants are, let me start over. Those aren't two secants, those are two tangents. So the collision of two tangents is outside of the circle, which means we're going to use the equation with subtraction here. All right, so if you look at your cheat sheet, we see that we take our two arcs, and we're going to subtract those measures. So I have 218 minus 142. Whatever number you get there, we're going to multiply it by 1/2, and that will give us our x value. So if you plug this right into your calculator, you see that x is equal to 38. Number 8, same thing, we have two tangents here, and we see that the collision and the angle is outside of the circle. So we're going to use that equation with subtraction. Now this time we have to be careful because the angle outside is not what we're looking for. We're looking for this angle here. All right, so this time we know that that angle is 34, that outside angle, is equal to 1/2 the difference of our arc measures. So the first arc measure is 198. The second arc measure, that's what we're looking for, is x. First thing I want to get rid of is this multiplication of 1/2. So to get rid of that, I'm just going to multiply it by the reciprocal, which is 2. Multiply this by 2, so 1/2 times 2 cancels out. And when we multiply 2 times 34, we get 68 is equal to 198 minus x. If we subtract 198 from each side, we get negative 130 is equal to negative x. Divide by -1 on each side. So x then is equal to 130. Number 9, we want to find x. So here we have a tangent and a secant. So that equation would be taking this part of our tangent and squaring it. So x squared is equal to we want to look at the outside part of our secant, 6, multiply it by the entire secant, which 6 plus 4 is 10. So we end up getting that x squared is equal to 6 times 10, which is 60. And so x then is equal to the square root of 60, which is approximately 7.75. Question 10, we want to once again find x. So we have chords here, and so we want to look at each part of the chord and multiply them together. So our first chord is this guy here, so that would be 3 times x is equal to, now let's look at this chord here, which is 9 and 5, so 9 times 5, so we get that 3x is equal to 45. So x then is equal to 15. Number 11, let's solve for x. We have chords again, so we're going to look at the parts of that chord. So for this here, we have 2x times the other part, which is 3x, is equal to, let's look at this chord here. Those parts are 3 times 18. When we multiply this together, 2x times 3x, that is 6x squared, is equal to, we have 3 times 18, and that is 54. Now I'm trying to solve for x, so the first thing I want to do is divide by 6 on each side, so divide by 6, divide by 6. X squared then is equal to 9. And I end up getting that x is equal to positive 3. Negative 3 will not work in this case because if you plug in x here, that would give that chord length of a negative 6, and that doesn't make sense. So only one answer here, and it's x is equal to positive 3. Number 12, so we have 2 secants here. So I want to look at the external part of my secant, which is that piece there. So 3 times this entire secant, which if you notice, that is what x is equal to. So I want to focus on the external piece of that secant, which is 4 times this entire length of that secant. So I'm going to take 4 and add that to 8, so we get 12. Now let's simplify, so 3 times x is just 3x. 4 times 12 is 48. I'm going to divide each side by 3, so x then is equal to 16. Find the value of x. So here we have our 2 secants. They collide outside here. And so I need to look at my arc measures. I know that since this is outside, I'm going to use subtraction. So 29 is equal to 1/2 times the difference of my arcs, x minus 56. I need to get x by itself, so I need to get rid of that 1/2, so I'm going to multiply by 2 on each side so that these cancel out. 2 times 29, I get 58 is equal to x minus 56. Add 56 on each side. 114 then is equal to x. Question 14, we want to find x. Now if we look here, we have 2 chords that collide here in the middle. So since the collision is inside of the circle here, I'm going to use addition for my equation. So here are my 2 arcs that I'm focusing on. So I know that x is equal to 1/2 times the sum, so 140 plus 146. If I plug that right into my calculator, we end up getting that x is equal to 143. Write the standard equation of a circle. Now to write the standard equation of a circle, we first need the center of the circle, which if we look here, the center has to be in the middle. So the only spot it could be would be that coordinate there, which is 3, 1. And then we need the radius. So if I start at the center, I go over 1, 2, meaning that the radius is 2. So now I have everything I need. So this would be h, this is k. So my equation of the circle is x minus 3 squared plus y minus 1 squared is equal to the radius squared, which is 4. And finally, what is the center and the radius of the circle? All right, so we know that, let's start with the easy one. Let's start here. We know that 64 is equal to the radius squared. So if I'm trying to find the radius, I just need to do the square root of each side. And so 8 then is equal to r. So my radius is equal to 8. Now let's find the center. All right, so the standard form is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared. If we look here, we still have a minus sign, which is good, meaning that this is positive. So our x value for our center is positive 12. If we look here, we notice that it does change. Instead of y minus 5, we have y plus 5, meaning that this value is actually negative. So my center, my y value for my center would be negative 5.